Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Jim Kavanaugh, and the monster is finally showing its fangs. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with the one and only Dr. Jim Kavanaugh on a Sunday afternoon. And oh my, we got one or two things to talk about. Let's start off with the EU. Let's start off with this because there's a theme here. And the theme, let me give you the theme from my perspective. I can't speak for Dr. Jim. And that is a bit of a conflict. Is when I look at the things that the current administration is doing, there's outrage. However, there's a little conflict. Well, let's start. I'm going to throw this at you, Jim. And then we'll address the conflict. And that is, yeah, I'm outraged. But I was outraged when they were doing it in Vietnam. It's too young to know what was going on then. I was outraged when they killed 1 million people in Iraq. I'm outraged that they overthrew the government of Ukraine. And when I see people on the street in Ukraine being beaten and thrown into vans and sent to the front and all this craziness in Ukraine and the liberals saying, we got to stand with Ukraine. You know, need I go on? Libya and you name it. And what they've done in Venezuela, they've been doing it for a year. This is the second time. And I can go country after country where there's overthrown, where they literally killed priests, raped nuns with U.S. right-wing hit squads. So, yeah. I'm outraged at what's happening with the Trump administration, but I'm conflicted. Jim Kavanaugh, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, true, 100%. Look, this is what they did in Vietnam. I was old enough to remember it and was outraged by it. And 100 times in Latin America, Dominican Republic, Panama, Grenada, coups in Brazil, and of course the Pinochet in Chile, but an explicit invasion of Iraq. The great moment. I think it was John Kerry who got up and said something about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Countries can't just go around invading other countries like that anymore. That's 19th century imperialism. After the Americans had done that in Iraq, and don't forget, Madeleine Albright was asked about 500,000 children, the effects of the sanctions on Iraq. I said, well, 500,000 children, but I think it was worth it. That's, 500,000 children, she acknowledged and said, I think that was worth it. Anyway, so all of these things, we do live in a world in which, and especially since the demise of the Soviet Union, where the United States started, Bill Clinton went into Yugoslavia with the Europeans. Suddenly, we don't need the UN to tell us whether it's legitimate to attack and overthrow a government. We can do it. The United States and its allies now, the coalition of the willing, or the rules-based order outside of the UN, the old rules-based order that the Americans make the rules and everybody else follows their orders. We now decide who can be attacked and who can't. It was always done. However, it was missionary imperialism. It wasn't 19th century missionary imperialism to bring Christianity and civilization, but it was to bring freedom and democracy and market democracy. That was the Clintonian line to these countries. And there was, they made up some kind of premise. They made up WMDs in Iraq. They made up the Libyan soldiers are going and raping everybody, and they're killing thousands of people in Benghazi. And the Serbs are killing everybody in Serbia, blah, 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 blah. They made up massacres to justify this. So you're in a situation now where, the made up story about Maduro being a drug trafficker, they just dropped that. The story, nobody believes or is meant to believe any of the stories that the made up stories that they get. There's no missionary impulse here. There's no, we're coming to bring democracy to Venezuela, which they don't lack, but they don't even pretend they're going to change the regime. Essentially, they say we leave the same people in place. We just want to run the country. So we're in a situation where the mask is off. And Stephen Miller gets on television and says, we do it because we can do it, because we have the power to do it. Nobody can stop us. We'll take over Greenland because we have the power to do it. We'll take over Venezuela because we have the power to do it. Donald Trump gets up and says, the ethic that I follow, the basis of my, the only criterion that I use to decide what's good or what's bad is my personal sense of what's good and bad. And I run the world, and therefore I'm going to do what I think is good, what I think is right. So there is this kind of bizarre situation where, look at the Europeans. You can't appeal to what the pretend premise that was there before, because there's nobody's making a pretense of following the rules and regulations of the international order. International law and international law order that was always precarious. The whole architecture of post-war international law was always precarious because it always did de facto not apply to the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, which could block anything and do anything they wanted under that architecture, and did. And what's happened since the demise of the Soviet Union, when the Americans were the hyperpower and they could do anything, and they could presume that the Russians couldn't do anything to stop them and they could just ignore them. That was true for 20, 30 years, 25 years anyway, until the Russians started pushing back, and now they can't do everything they want against the Russians, but they're adopting explicitly the ethic might makes right. And we're the most powerful country in the world. We're going to do what we want. They may not be the most powerful country in the world. They may run into a problem. But at any rate, so what do we think of that? You know, the Europeans are flummoxed by it because they want to pretend they're doing the right thing, and they can't anymore. They can't pretend that this is in any way the logic or the ethic that rules the international order. They are being treated as the dogs they have been. They're little puppies to the Americans, and the Americans are now kicking them to the curb and saying, guess what, puppy, we don't need you anymore. And if you don't do what we want, we're going to treat you just like we treated Saddam, just like we treated Maduro. So they got a problem with this now. The only issue is, you know, there was this great, I don't know, you know, the commentator, he's a French guy who lives in China called Arnaud Bertrand, and he did a nice tweet storm, or it's on a Substack too, about this. You know, the fact that we don't live up to our ideals, we never do to a certain extent, but it's a good thing to have them there. And it's a good thing that people who don't live up to their ideals or don't live up to the ethic that they pretend to have to pretend. It's a good thing that you have to pretend to do something like that. It's a good thing that in the world, you can't just say, I'm going to kill my neighbor because I feel like it. You have to say, it's really a bad thing to kill one's neighbor. I recognize that, but I killed him because for some reason I make up. But you've got to be able to say in your mind, it's a bad thing to kill your neighbor. It's a bad thing to kill your neighbor just because you don't like the way he looks, or, you know, he's got an ugly dog or whatever. You know, it's not a good thing. It's substantively the same thing if you can kill your neighbor and get away with it, even if you make an excuse on the micro level. But on the macro level, it's not substantively the same thing if everybody gives up having to justify what they do. You know what I mean? So this is part of the problem. You know, if it's might makes right, not only practically as a matter of fact, but also as a matter of explicit ethic now that applies to everybody, you're going to get into a situation where it's war. It's the war of all against all, and someone's going to get. And the United States is itching, cruising for a bruising on that, because they're not the most powerful country in the world anymore. And what you've got is a situation now where precisely. And everybody has to realize this. We saw this with Israel. Israel's been doing this with the Palestinians for 80 years. And the Americans are now doing it to the world like they did it to Palestine. Like, you know, it's Palestine come home, whether it's ICE in Minneapolis or, you know, we got the power. We're going to bully you. We're going to do what we want. And that's going to continue until someone forcibly puts a stop to it, until you smash that bully in the face and stop them and say, the reason we have to have some kind of architecture of international law and recognized, agreed upon regulations is because you're going to get your ass kicked and you're going to get your face smashed in if you don't agree to it. So that is the situation we're in. And there's no, this isn't going to stop until the Americans get defeated in some way. It's not, Israelis aren't going to stop until they get defeated. This isn't going to stop until the Americans get defeated by explicitly renouncing any kind of notion of agreed upon international law or ethics. You have entered the world into a space where everybody's in that space now, and everybody in it, and they will eventually realize it. They're going to continue doing that. The only way that space is going to change is going to be if force is exerted from other quarters. If the bully who thinks that they can beat everybody up gets beaten up, and that has to happen now, or forget about it. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're in a very difficult situation, and the best we can hope for, what the Americans kind of, sort of, but I don't think they're giving up on hegemony anywhere in the world.
No,
this notion of spheres of influence. Russia can have Ukraine. We'll have Latin America. Chinese can have Taiwan. I don't think they really want to. I think they want to keep. I think the neocons really want to keep hegemony in the world. They want to figure out a way to do that. But that may be the best we can hope for. But eventually, someone has got to smash the bully in the face, or the world is going to be just a world full of bullies.
Well, here's the thing. This is where my contradictions arise. I don't think any of those things are any different. I think the only difference, the U.S. did the exact same thing. They just used liberal intervention. We're doing it because we're going to good, or what are you going to do? We're going to attack this country and kill 1 million people, right? Before Trump came in, they were committing genocide. And they said, well, we're trying everything we can. We're trying to work things with people. We're working hard to get a ceasefire or whatever the hell. And then as soon as Trump came, the Israelis said, nah, they weren't. They were lying the whole time, right? So if you're a Palestinian, you get bombs, and they're saying we're trying to work for a ceasefire. You get bombs, and they don't say it. They said, no, we're not. It doesn't matter. To materialist speaking, nothing has changed for the people out here who are victims of the empire except the rhetoric, right? So my thoughts, my contradiction, whatever you want to call it, is that I'm not sure I agree with the people who say something is materially worse or rhetorically worse or something. I could make an argument that if there's a rattlesnake and a copperhead, I choose the rattlesnake because he rattles and I can go around it. I step on the copperhead, he bites me. I never hear a word. He's camouflaged. He's in there up against an oak tree. I don't see him. I step on him. I'm bit, right? So I could make just as easy as someone can make a philosophical argument that it's better off if we talk nice and steal everything that ain't nailed down and go back and steal the nails and overthrow people and kill people and slaughter and murder and genocide and say nice things. I could make equally as strong an argument that I think we're better off when we say it, that the best thing that could have happened now is that people now have the opportunity to see the monster for itself. So I don't know. Now on Europe, let me say this. But I know you weren't taking a position. I know you were just like putting it out there. Let me say this about Europe. Here's the problem that Europe has. And I saw this with Kaja Kallas the other day. She's tweeting, well, China and Russia are the ones that really, when allies fight, China and Russia are the ones that really benefit. Like somehow she's going to say to the U.S., this monster, your lunch, Kaja Kallas. Have you ever heard that old African proverb that says it is the sheep thinks that the shepherd, I forgot, the one where the sheep thinks that the shepherd is protecting him, and he stays around the shepherd all the time, feeling that the shepherd is protecting him, and ultimately it's the shepherd that eats him. The problem is this: there ain't no wolf. The shepherd created a wolf. The U.S. created a wolf, be it Russia or China. There was no wolf. Now that they're hungry, now they're like, man, we can't steal the stuff from Africa like we used to. Darn. Asia, we can't steal the stuff from there like we used to. What about South America? Well, that's hard. We got a struggle coming. We're going to try to steal that stuff. We're not 100% sure. What about Europe? That's easy. Let's steal theirs. Your lunch. You are guilty, as the wolf says to the sheep, you're guilty because I'm hungry. So now you've got these idiots. People like us have been saying for a long time, Europeans, you think the Americans love you. You have made a Faustian deal, a deal with the devil, and Donald Trump is coming for his due. Donald Trump, the devil is coming for his payment. And it doesn't matter if it was Trump or Clinton or Obama, right? So now they're still like, oh, but daddy, please. Oh, we can be friends, daddy. And the US is like, yeah, well, we can't eat them anymore, so we're eating you now. And you just keep on with that allies, that Russia, China, we're all together. We ain't allies. We'll start with Greenland. Oh, by the way, we want more money from you. Don't buy anything. In the same way that the U.S. said, South America, you guys can't buy anything from Russia and China. You can only buy from us, right? Haven't they also said to Europe, by blowing up their infrastructure, oh, by the way, you can't buy gas, you can't buy oil from Russia, you can only buy it from us. They're treating you the same way they treated the global South. They are impoverishing you. And they're going to take every dime you got, and you're still looking at daddy, talking about, daddy, we're allies. Oh, please, daddy, can't we still stand up against Russia and China? You fools. The colonial Faustian bargain is finally coming. The bill is coming due.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Look, there's no question about it. I love the devil analogy, the devil with Trump kind of being, when the mask falls, literally, the movie when the devil face comes up, the Obama and face falls and there's Trump. So yeah, this is absolutely true. And look, this is the thing that I said, in fact, when the Russian, in 22, when Russia entered Ukraine and, any complaints about international law, that's over. The Americans and Zionists have done away with international law a long time ago. And if you want there to be a regime of international law, we are going to have to make it. Again, we're going to have to make it. And the table is going to be round. The United States is not going to have the chair seat of the table. We're going to have to sit down and make a new regime of international law that and some way means of enforcement. It's not there. It never really applied to the major powers. And since the demise of the Soviet Union, that meant it never really applied to the United States and Israel. It never applied to Israel. But now everybody sees this. And the Europeans don't want to admit it. They want to feel like they're in the right. They're always doing the right thing. We're the good guys. Our alliance with the United States is the alliance of the good guys. Baloney. And you don't have an alliance. You decide that there are allies. You were never the United States' ally. You were their pets. You were their dogs. You were their slaves and messengers. You did what they said. You cut off your economic relations with Russia. You cut off the gas. You weakened yourself economically. You disarmed yourself by sending all your arms to Ukraine under the direction of the United States. And now you're turning around, and Daddy is treating you like the dog they've always considered. Before, he pet you nicely, and he gave you some food, and he put you together with the other dogs and had a nice little kennel. But now you're realizing you're giving away all your wealth, you're giving away all your power. And you're giving it to Daddy. So, and he's coming for you and saying, I want a piece of your cake now. I want Greenland, and we're going to watch. I mean, what are they going to do? Apparently Germany and France are going to go to Denmark and say, give them Greenland. I mean, this is disgraceful. I mean, that may be what they do. Maybe don't. Maybe they're going to send 10 troops. I saw that. Who was it sent? Was it Germany who sent 50 soldiers and then told them to come back? The minute that Trump got on TV and said, we're going to put 10% more tariffs on you. I mean, this is the world we're in now. We all have to acknowledge that if we want a regime, some kind of regime of international law that applies to all states, if we want some kind of world in which national sovereignty means anything over and against, small countries over and against big, powerful countries, if we want anything like that, we're going to have to find a way to create it. And the first step that's going to be necessary for that is to defeat American imperialism and Zionism. Those are the two forces in the world that have destroyed the always fragile architecture of international law set up post World War II. They've destroyed it, and they are going to continue to bully it, run around the world, breaking everything at their own whim. And there cannot be a regime of international law or international ethics that's anything but might makes right until and unless American imperialism and Zionism are destroyed, are defeated, are militarily, are made to see and experience the fact that they can't get away with everything they think they can get away with. And that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know how it's going to happen. I think it will at some point, but, you know, to a certain extent it's happening in Ukraine, but they're pretending they don't quite know what to do about that. And we'll see what the final resolution of that is. But look, they're getting away with everything they want in Palestine. They're getting away with everything they want in Latin America so far. I mean, at least they seem to be. Although what the actual result of it is for them, it's not. At the end of the day, they're going to be weaker than that because you do need allies. You know, if you want real allies, you have to treat them as allies. You can't treat them as dogs. But somebody's going to have to teach that lesson to the big dog. The big dog is going to have his ass whooped, have his snout smacked, and be put down. I mean, I just don't know what to say. This is the situation we're in now. We're in a situation where anybody who kind of pretends that they can appeal to the United States on the basis of this international law is obviously kidding themselves. So you want some regime of international law? Let's figure out how to create it. But I'm going to say the first step to do that is to defeat American imperialism and Zionism.
You know, here's the thing about it too. You know, the Israelis, you know, I mean, let's look at it. And you can say the Israelis are an appendage of the US, right? Empire. The Israelis, I mean, how long has the UN said, all right, this is illegal, you have to do this. Oh, this occupation is illegal. And the US and the Israelis just ignored it. International law, you cannot take land and keep it. You have to give back the Golan Heights. And the US said, Israel said, no, we're not. And the US said, hey, let's rename towns in the Golan Heights. It was always here. We were always here. That's my point. But now it's just more blatant. And now we're in a situation, I'm hearing some weird feedback. But at any rate, my point is now we're in a situation wherein it's, like I said, I can make an argument that it's better. The Europeans now, here's the other thing. You made up a good point about the Europeans. The Europeans are in a situation where they've been had so bad. Nobody's been had as bad as the Europeans. And they are left now. Here's the plan with Ukraine. That's simple. The war's lost. What are you going to do? We're going to give it to the Europeans. And then we're going to say you lost the war. Oh, by the way, any rebuilding to be done, you have to rebuild it. Oh, by the way, while you're doing that, you got to buy all your gas and oil and everything from us because you're going broke and you really won't be able to afford it. But we'll sell you whatever you can afford. But Ukraine's going to be a disaster and it's yours. Yes, we want Ukraine to be in the EU. Why? Because the EU will be responsible for rebuilding Ukraine. The EU will be responsible for the money going to Ukraine. Go out and take out a loan of $90 billion. Why? Well, so that you can give that money to Ukraine because we're going to launder it through Ukraine and steal every dime of it anyway. So who cares? So Ukraine is now just another tool that's being used to impoverish Ukraine. And as you said, throw all your weapons in there. Don't stop Ukraine until you've thrown your last weapon in Ukraine and you're completely out of money. You're completely out of weapons and we'll take Greenland. You know why? Even if you wanted to fight, you can't because all your weapons are gone and you can't defend yourself against us. But we've made sure you're completely unarmed. You're completely impoverished and just keep calling us your ally. Stand with us against Russia and China. Yeah, you're going to be so weak. If we wanted you to fight with us against Russia and China, you couldn't. But the plan was there's three powerful entities, Russia, China, and the EU bloc. Those are the three huge economic blocs. Guess what? We've eliminated one of them. All we got to do is two more to go. Yeah. And I'm looking at, and you know what? Look what you've been doing around the world, Europe. Look what you've been doing. You thought there was nothing. You thought there was no price to pay for that. You thought that you could just rob and steal from Africa, Asia, French Indochina, everywhere. Just weeks ago, Trump went in, he kidnapped Maduro, and the Europeans were like, great work. Good, way to go. Get those dictators. Ha, ha, ha. What's Trump going to say next? Well, the Denmark leader is a dictator who's killing the protesters. I think he's got fentanyl. Perhaps he's sending drug boats to the U.S. And, did I mention? I think he's building nukes. Denmark's building nukes. We got to take Greenland because they'll put their nukes in Greenland and kill us all. He might as well. And he should. I'm looking forward to hearing that rhetoric.
Yeah, well, yeah. But look, you're seeing it with Greenland. He's giving them the right. We're going to take Greenland because we have the power to, and you can't stop us. That's what they're doing. You can't pretend that that's not the driving ethic of the United States anymore. You can't pretend it. You could pretend it previously because the American leaders themselves pretended it was something else, but they all did it. I mean, they all did it. And this is the case. Look, there was no justification for what they did in Serbia. There's no justification. They went in. Victoria Nuland said, we spent $5 billion to take over Ukraine. They broke every agreement. They broke every agreement about expanding NATO. They broke every agreement. They came to agreements in Ukraine about having new elections. They broke them. They don't care. They just presumed that nobody had the power to do anything to stop them, and which was true until recently. And but they also presented themselves as the good guys. We are the good guys. We're in favor of democracy. These horrible dictators and democracy and freedom and market democracy. And there's none of that left anymore. But the problem is, the United States isn't that strong economically. Internally, it's screwed up. Nobody wanted this Iraq war. Nobody wants regime change wars. Everybody is saying, why can't we have health care? We're going to take over Greenland? You're going to take away their free public health care? When they become the 51st state, they're going to be the only state with free public health care? Oh, you can't have that because the Americans don't have it. So now you're American. You got to buy health insurance from United Healthcare. You can't run the United States, and you're going to take over all these other places and start running them. And American people that's one of the reasons Trump, this is the point. Trump did pretend. He did pretend to be something else. He pretended to be America first. He pretended to be anti-regime change. He pretended all kinds of things. It was a very bad pretense, and anybody who had any perspicacity could have seen that it was phony. But people bought it. And, at the end of the day, this isn't going to stop until the American people stop buying this bullshit. If you think that ICE is doing something to stop immigration or is going to help the American worker, you're a fool. ICE is a uncontrolled police force that's going to be is being used against American citizens to have absolute immunity and create a police state, even worse police state in the United States, where nobody can go out in the street without being accosted by the cops, by some cop who have no right to resist them being dragged away to check your ID 2 weeks later, or be thrown into some concentration camp in Florida or in El Salvador. This is so. If you think that, so this is then. Yeah, the biggest fools are the Europeans. The biggest fools are the American people who thought that, Donald Trump was going to save them, who thought that Barack Obama was going to save them, who thought, this is not going to happen. You have to get together yourself and you have to create the rule of law and the rule of fairness in a society. And you have to understand what's going on in the world to do that. So this is the problem we have. And eventually, the United States is going to get smacked in the face. Internationally, internally, somebody in ICE is going to get shot and killed, and you're going to have a fight. You're going to have people in the American society fighting against each other and killing each other. You have it, and that's going to continue until people wake the fuck up. And this is Donald Trump versus Gavin Newsom, give me a break, versus Barack Obama. They're bought and sold. They bought and sold. And this is clear. So you have to, we don't have a democracy. We have to construct it. We don't have an international regime of international law and human rights. We have to construct it. Okay. There are forces in the world now that can help you construct that, aren't really interested in taking over every country in the world and have enough power to help you construct an international regime. What's in the United States that helps you can do that? I don't know. It's, give up, let's call ourselves, inflate our own importance. We can't inflate our own importance. We're not that important, but we might want to do that. There are voices there who are doing it. It's not MAGA. It's not the Democrats. So I don't know what the hell it is.
You and I just covered several months back that the U.S. was creating, remember this, a rapid deployment force. Remember we covered that, and it said like the Pentagon created to quell dissent. And it was long, 6-8 months ago. And I think we did a video where we're like, yeah, we got to see what's coming here, right? Well, guess what? What do you know? The Pentagon readies 1,500 troops for possible Minnesota deployment. Look at that, right? That's one. And of course, who didn't see that coming? And the other one is here we go. You're going to love this, Jim. Pentagon is adding Elon Musk Grok to military networks, right? So they're adding AI. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that they pull up to your car. The AI now looks at your tag. The AI scans your social media. The AI looks at your bank accounts. The AI looks. Guess what? Do you remember when Doge, led by Musk, went through the government and they were able to get to all of the most detailed information about citizens, and people were saying, you can't do that. The court's got to stop, and the courts let them do it. AI now looks at your tax returns, at everything, that when, who died in your family, how much property you own, where street you live on, where you have lived, everything about you is there. And now the military is on the street. And they look at you, they scan your tag, they scan everything. Or they don't bother. You walk by, you're in the crowd. Well, they facial recognition scan. What do you know? There's Jim. And let's look at some of his statements. Hey, he said something about Semitism, anti-Semitism. Something about Zionism. Grab him. You see what I'm saying? The idea that the military is being put on the street to bring order. Where have they brought order? They put them on the street. Look at where they put them on the street in the war on terror. Did they bring order anywhere? It's the opposite. They bring the hammer down. And these right-wingers, these fools, yes, they're bringing Trump, bring them on in. We've got to stop these lefties on the street. And I'm like, you poor fools. The government is putting troops on the street with all kind of AI, facial recognition and everything else. They're not there to bring order. Anyone, these people who supposedly are afraid of the government, they hate the government. The government's bad, and the government says we're putting troops on the ground to bring order. Yes, I hate the government. I don't trust them, but it's a good thing they're putting troops on the ground to bring order, Jim.
Yeah. No, look, it's anybody who would have objected to this under Biden and all the hardcore Trump personality disorder, cult of personality people always say, oh, look at what Biden is doing. He wants digital ID. He wants this. He wants to. And the Biden administration started this whole thing with domestic dissent, with the January 6th riot. It wasn't a good thing. I didn't think it was a good thing that a woman was killed. An unarmed woman was shot and killed for climbing in a window. She was a protester. She could have been arrested for trespassing, whatever. But, we talked about this 100 times. They're setting precedents that are going to be bad. This domestic terrorism crap started with Biden, and it's being accelerated to the nth degree with Trump. Trump was going to use it for his own purposes. I said this. I said, you watch Trump. He's not going to say misinformation. He's going to say terrorism. Biden is censoring Biden and the Democrats want to censor the internet and censor social media for misinformation. Donald Trump says, oh, we're going to open it up, except for terrorism. Terrorism we're going to crack down on. So this is now terrorism. Any kind of protest in the street is domestic terrorism. Renee Good was a domestic terrorism.
Insurrection Act.
Insurrection Act.
Insurrection
Exactly.
Act. That now
We
I can
said
shoot
this.
them. Insurrection,
Yeah.
I can shoot somebody. That the bull crap they used for January 6th was that it was
Exactly.
insurrection. How ironic that as soon as Trump gets power, oh, it's terrible. And we said, get out of here. That wasn't insurrection. Now Trump comes in and says, oh, you know what? The other side's doing insurrection, which means you can shoot them.
That's right. That's right. So this is exactly, you know, the problem is this is the dynamic that the country has been moving toward, okay? Because there are all kinds of problems, social problems that infuriate people, rightly so. And, you know, the opportunity to change some of that happened in 2008, 2009 with Obama, where everybody, this is the moment, socialist, everybody's a socialist now. Everybody understands we need a new FDR, we need a new, and Obama gave it all away to the fucking banks and let the small businesses die and let workers let housing be bought up by private equity and and 1,000 state legislature seats went from Democrat to Republican over the next 4 years, next 8 years during Obama's administration, and they lost. The swing went because they portrayed Trump as the big scary. He's the real anti-establishment guy. He's going to change everything if he comes in, and people bought that crap. So now you got Trump, who's a right-wing, reactionary, racist fool. And good thing is that he's a fool, because you know, this is foolish. You're going to lose this game if you play it this way. You're going to win for a while. You're going to intimidate a lot of people. You're going to hurt a lot of people. You're going to look like the king of the world until you get punched in the face. And you are going to get punched in the face somewhere. You're going to get punched in the face by the economic, social situation in the United States. And you're going to get punched in the face if you send in the troops and people start fighting back. I'm a big proponent of gun rights. I've written a lot about it. What I say about this is every neighborhood that ICE is in, we have to have 10 armed citizens showing up for every ICE officer. 5 to 10 times as many armed people. Keep them honest. Make sure they don't harass anybody. Make sure they don't kill anybody. This has to happen. You have to meet force with force. And that is what the Second Amendment is for. And we should use it. The Black Panthers are back out in Philadelphia, and they're very good. And, you know, this is what I'm in favor of: armed citizens standing up and standing in defense of their communities and their fellow citizens. And if you want to come into a place and you have a probable cause to check ID for some particular person, that's fine. But you want to start ramming random cars, and you want to start dragging 12-year-old and 15-year-old kids out of cars and going into high schools, you're going to have to go through this rank of armed citizens to do that. Let's see how that's going to happen. There has to be a confrontation. There has to be a confrontation that demonstrates where we're at, and that demonstrates there's counterpower that is going to hurt you. Okay? Nobody wants to see that, but they're pushing it, and they're pushing it internationally, and they're pushing it nationally. And someone on the international stage is going to have to stand up with arms and say, you cross this line, we're going to hit you. And that has to happen here too.
You know, I think that the U.S., sadly, unfortunately, I think the U.S. is going to kind of fall into political instability that could, I hate violence. I think it's going to fall into political instability and some kind of a violence in the direction that we're going when the government starts putting troops on the ground and start shooting citizens. It's just a matter of time. You know, there are some who argue, oh, that's what they want. They want more violence. Whatever they want, whatever they don't want. There are dynamics that you can't control. In the United States, a lot of Americans have guns and access to guns. If they start feeling threatened by the government, whatever, you and I could argue, they should shoot back. No, they shoot. Those things are irrelevant. There are dynamics that spin out of control, and the dynamics that we have now are spinning out of control. The other thing I would argue is this. Let me throw this at you, Jim. That's this concept that the system has somehow, like Trump has come in here and the system has gone awry under Trump. That the system needs to be, if we just had a better manager of this system, you know, everything would be fine. Here's my argument. To think that he could straighten the system out would be think that the system was ever straight in the first place. But let's be honest about this. They had slavery. They had apartheid. They wiped out the Native Americans, right? They had lynchings. Then what did they do? They during the Industrial Revolution, remember the people, the Ford people, when they came out with guns, the Pinkerton people, and shot down, literally took guns,
strikers,
and used violence and murdered strikers, right? They actually intended to overthrow. FDR was in office. And the billionaires of that time put together a bunch of people that intended to overthrow the U.S. government. It's just that one particular Marine commander turned them in, right? The idea now, and then what happened? Vietnam, the Korean War. I mean, I could go on, and then into the war on terror. The idea that this system has ever been some kind of a nice, kind, pure system is absurd. That it's not that the system has gone awry. It's that the ground beneath our feet is changing. And the Americans used to be able to pillage around the world, and pillaging ain't as easy as it used to be. It's, scrounging up a few more thousand barrels of stolen oil ain't as easy as it used to be. You can Iran's stronger, Russian, China's stronger. Now we can, sadly, I mean, I saw someone in the chat, illegal immigration is. If you believe that we went to Iraq because there was weapons of mass destruction, right? Oh, we went to Venezuela because we wanted to stop them from something about what is it? Well, a drug cartel that didn't exist, or maybe perhaps they were stealing our election. You know what I mean? The Russians are stolen elections. If you believe that, any of that stuff is real.
Yeah.
Right. I can't, the government, if you believe that right now, the government is doing that stuff in Minnesota because they're concerned about illegal immigration. You're part of the people who believe that the Ukraine bull crap, Russia gate. I mean, they have one lie after another. And the idea that the ruling elite go to their neighborhoods. Tell me who's cutting their grass. Tell me who's working in their homes. Tell me who's working on the construction sites for the buildings that they own. They take advantage of a dynamic of illegal immigration, so they will have a whole bunch of people out there that they can pay next to nothing and drive the price of it down. But you believe that the ruling elite, they're trying to do the right thing. That's why America goes down, because we're suckers. Because no matter how much they lie to us, we always believe the current lie.
Yeah, look, if they wanted to go after illegal immigration, taking American jobs, they'd go to the hotel industry. They'd go to the meatpacking industry. They'd go, but Trump himself said, we got to be careful because, I don't want the businesses, when they started to go after the hotel deal, I don't want to, you go and arrest the people who are employing them, and you that's not what they're doing.
Which would be Trump.
Neighborhoods. They go to neighborhoods with guys and gals who have families who've been here for 30 years. They're legal and legal residents. They have legal papers. They want to start throwing them out. They want to start denaturalizing people. This is a campaign of intimidation that's starting with so-called illegal immigrants. But it's first they came for the immigrants. I did nothing because I was an immigrant, and then they're going to go down the line, and they are going down the line. You cannot sit here and watch them go around the neighborhoods, banging on doors randomly, going around stopping people around. They don't have the right to do that. You need to have ICE as the only authority. They have to have reasonable suspicion that some particular person, or have a warrant for some particular person who they know is here illegally, and look for them and find them. They don't have the right to stop people, stop cars at random and ask, are you a citizen? This is nonsense. So this has to stop, but it's not going to stop until it's made to stop, until the people, everybody, if you're sitting around going, hoo-ha, go ICE, you're going to have to get smacked in the face. You're going to have to watch ICE get smacked in the face. And you're going to have, so you want ICE to kill Renee Good? You think that's a good thing? Well, the guy, I saw this yesterday, an ICE agent, because a lot of Latinos are going to ICE because they got a $50,000 bonus, and they're saying, you want to get papers? Join ICE. Now a Latino guy was an ICE officer filling up his car, and they grabbed him, and he said, I'm ICE. They took him away. They didn't care. I don't care. This is nonsense. So this is intimidation. This is to create a police state which is going to go after every dissident, everybody who doesn't agree with the Trump line now, but whoever's line is in office. That's what's going to happen. You want that? You're going to get it until you get the resistance to it. Okay. So if you want a civil war, you're going to get it. And, you may win, you may lose, whatever, but it's going to be, why would you want that? And this is the problem that Trump has. Because I always said, from the point of view of the ruling class doesn't really want that. They're doing fine. They're doing fine without a civil war. They got people cowed. They got people fighting with each other over bullshit. And nobody's challenging really the power of the socioeconomic elite. Nobody's challenging that. So why do they want to create the mayhem and chaos and violence that is going to potentially threaten them? And this is the problem. And this is what Trump doesn't understand. What hard-wing right-wingers don't understand, and Miller doesn't understand, and Vought doesn't understand. If you create this, you are going to end up getting yourself threatened in ways that you didn't have to, and that you could have avoided. And that's what the smart elements of the ruling class always said. Oh, we're going to create a situation which fools a lot of people and looks good for a lot of people and is good for a certain percentage of the population. And as long as we can keep the lid on everything, it's Obama. I'm standing between you and the pitchforks. Trump comes in and says, I'm letting the pitchforks in. But the pitchforks, turns out, are the pitchforks of the ruling class. They're the pitchforks of white supremacist bullshit and xenophobia. And that's not going to work. Ultimately, it's just not going to work. I mean, the only way to make is kill everybody. You're not going to be able to do it because there's 40 million people with arms in the United States, and you're not going to do it without a fight. And that's not going to help the ruling class. The smart elements of the ruling class, that's not going to help us. We want to rule without fighting, and we're going to try to do that. So, but I don't know what's going to happen now. We're in a situation where it's gone. It's clear. The situation is going to have to be resolved. There's going to have to be confrontation and confrontations that reset the situation in some way. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but we're in very, very dangerous situations.
It looks like we're heading towards some kind of violence in the street to me. It doesn't, it looks like we're heading in the directions of some kind of violence in the street. It certainly looks as though, my mic better now? I unplugged and reset it. It seems like it's improved. It's
fine. I always heard you fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was getting some feedback. I think people in the chat were getting a little bit, but I don't hear it now. But I think, and I'm afraid, you know what I mean? We have friends and family members and stuff walking the street. We don't want bullets to be flying around and people are getting hit and innocent people are getting shot. But the reality is, I think it looks like that's the direction that we're heading. And something that people have to understand, most Americans, and this is one of the ways we got into this mess, they don't ever connect foreign policy to domestic policy. Right? The difference between foreign policy and domestic policy is only grammatical. That's it. It's only in rhetoric, right? When Stephen Miller says, hey, it's the law of the jungle. When Stephen Miller says we can take Greenland, Venezuela, whatever, why? Because we're more powerful. We can take it because we're strong and we're powerful, and the strong do what they, the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must, right? What Americans are like, yes, we'll do that over there. Oh, no, my friend.
Yeah.
They mean it for you too.
Yeah.
And then in the street, they say, you're weak and we're strong. The government's strong and the citizens are weak. We'll boss you around. We'll push you around. We'll shoot you. We'll beat you. We'll arrest you. They don't understand that that violence and power that they're using to dominate. He's not just talking about the people in Greenland. He's talking about the people in Greenburg, West Virginia. He's talking about Greenville, Kentucky. He's talking about wherever someone stands. What happens when you get to the point and you say, I don't like what the government's doing. And they say, but we're strong and you're weak. You ain't got to like it. That's what they don't connect. That rhetoric that we do what we want because we're strong is manifesting itself internally also.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This is what's happening. And the ruling class is not your ally. You're not an ally of theirs. They don't care about you. Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, Sheldon, Miriam Adelson, Haim Saban. Did you see this? This great American Jewish Council had Miriam Adelson and Haim Saban. And it's interesting because Haim Saban is a big Democratic Zionist fundraiser. And nobody talks about him that much because they go after the Republicans. But he's a big, and they said, he's the guy that the moderators has them both on each side. Said, tell me how it is that you get along so well with the politicians and you influence, and they're both going like, we don't really want to talk about that. And Haim Saban goes, well, I gave him some money, but she really gave him a lot of money. You should talk to her. And the guy goes, yeah, but it's not just money. Well, yeah, okay, it's not just money, but guess what? And Haim Saban's going, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to be honest about that. Because really, it is money. It depends on how much you contribute. That gets you access. And access, they listen to what you say. So this is the way it is. And if you think they care, again, this is billionaires creating a Congress that they turn into millionaires that get people who make $100,000 to look down on and despise people who make $50,000 to look down and despise people who make $10,000. I mean, this is baloney. And if you don't get out of this, you think the damn, Biden had a crazy border policy, close the border, have as strict an immigration policy as you want, but have an honest discussion about it. Have an honest policy about it. Do it according to procedures and according to an ethic that's reasonable, okay? You don't throw people out of the country who've been here for 30 years and leave their children behind. You don't do that. There's no reason to do that. You have to have, I'm all for, open borders is great. It's the ultimate goal, but so is open borders. We need capital controls. We need border controls. This is we can't yet have open borders, but that's not the point. The point is we can't have a decent discussion about this. We can't have an intellectually honest discussion about this. The Democrats weren't intellectually honest about it, and the Republicans are not being intellectually honest about it. Now, what they're doing out with ICE in the street is not honest immigration policy. It is dishonest, authoritarian, repressive, dictatorial. We're going to crush anything we want. And the we is the ruling class. It's the big club you're not a part of that don't give a damn about you and want you to live precarious lives where you can't afford your education, you can't afford healthcare. They don't care. And you become more and more anxious, and all you have is credit card debt, and you're paying off to the banks, and that's it. So that's what they want. And the Peter Thiels and the Donald Trumps and the Miriam Adelsons and all, that's what they care about. And so you don't understand that? I'm sorry. You're going to fight someone because they immigrated here? I mean, they're putting the damn Native Americans, taking them off the street. We're going to deport them to. I mean, this is ridiculous. So this is standard right-wing xenophobia, racism being used to prop up a system that's failing failing everybody economically. Socioeconomic lives are becoming more precarious, and therefore they want you to fight everybody else whose lives are equally precarious or even more precarious. And it's going to continue until people wake up and stand up.
The other interesting thing too is the issue of borders. Let's face it. What caused the border problem? When did the border start to crack? Really go bad? NAFTA. 1.4 million Mexicans lost their farms, and all of these Mexicans showed up. So we destabilized these countries, and then all of these people. What about Europe? How did that
Venezuela
mess started? Yeah, how about Europe? How did that mess start? They overthrew the Syrians. That's when it really started, when they started the dirty war in Syria, and 2 million Syrians showed up on their border. They overthrew Libya, and all these people, the Africans, went through Libya, and all these Libyans, Afghanistan, Afghans everywhere. What they do is they overthrow and destabilize. The people from these countries then show up at the border, and then they try to convince us to blame the people that are the victims of their policies, just like we. Yes. So those people are the victims of their policies. They show up, and what do they get out of it? They get lower wages out of it that they're paying. So now they benefit from an impoverished poor class that they can pay next to nothing. They turn us against those people. And now Trump says, what the hell is going to happen if Trump starts bombing and starts wars in South America? There'll be millions showing up. And they'll use them and they'll traffic them and they'll sexually traffic them and they'll use them, pay them slave wages, and they'll take advantage of that too. And they'll say to us, when our everything goes to hell, you know, it's those damn immigrants that did this to you.
Exactly.
That's the game.
Exactly. They create these economic sanctions that they say are meant to make the economy scream, make the people scream, to create social devastation and discontent, and that drive emigration from those countries and immigration here. And that's what you're absolutely right. It's what happened in Europe with the Syrian refugees. So what's happening here with Venezuela. Where do the Venezuelan refugees come from? And they have this phony game. Oh, socialism doesn't work. You attack the country. You made the economy scream. You're the most powerful economic force in the world. Then you punish that country until it was devastated. And then the people left say, oh, it doesn't work. Look at the people running away. Of course they're running away. They're running away from economic devastation. They will run away. Everybody will do that. So this is phony. If you're not against imperialism, you better not talk about immigration, because you're not understanding what drives immigration to the United States. So this is just, but that's the situation. So we have a problem that is a deep, deep problem of American political culture, and it's gotten worse because the parties involved in it are dishonest, phony. They don't work for the American people. They pretend to do so in various ways. One by pretending to work for American people versus immigrants. One by whatever, for this group of people versus that group of people. But they work for the ruling class, and this is a class struggle in the United States and in the world. We have to leave other countries alone to determine their own economic destiny and to overthrow the ruling classes if they want. That's not our business to protect the ruling class of Venezuela. It's not our business. It's in nobody's interest in the United States to protect the Venezuelan ruling class. So, and that's what drives immigration. So all of this is just, class struggle in the world and class struggle in the United States. And until we get to that point, we're going to be in these stupid battles and very dangerous battles. And now you're in battles that the regime, the American regime, is going to have to come up against force in some way, in some theater that stops it and that forces it to retreat and back off. And we'll have to see.
Well, the last thing I'll say is this. And when I look in the chat and somebody says, but you don't understand, immigration is the problem. You know what I see? You still think the government's trying to fix this thing, don't you? You know what I mean? You still think, well, we do have a problem with immigration, illegal immigration. Let's just say we do, for just sake of argument. You still think that the Trump administration is trying to fix illegal immigration, that the government is there to straighten things out. I don't know what to tell you. If you haven't figured out, they're lying to you. They're not trying to fix anything. The man just said, hey, you know what? I think we need another $500 billion added to the Pentagon budget. Trust me when I tell you this, whoever you are in the chat saying that you actually believe that they're sending ICE people there because they're going to work on illegal immigration, you're being had. They added $500 billion to the defense budget. And you know what's going to happen? That $500 billion, my friend, let me tell you. So Trump has just about doubled the Pentagon budget since he came in. They ain't getting nothing extra. The only thing Raytheon's going to do is they're going to say, hey, we got another 500. We got another 500 billion. What do you want to do? Raytheon says, oh, well, you know that missile we'll sell you for $1 million. Yeah. How much did you improve? How much did you raise the budget? We raised it by 60%. You know, funny thing, the price of that missile just went up. You'll get the exact same amount of things you got. They will raise the prices, whatever amount more money you have. If they're selling you 10 missiles, those 10 missiles will cost 60% more. You will not get 11 missiles. you'll get 10. That's what these people don't get. It's all a scam. Oh, by the way, the generals that are ordering those missiles are getting paid off so that as soon as they retire, they can get a job for the guy who made those 11 missiles. They ain't going to say, hey, guys, they're schnookering us for missiles. No, because they're going to get their fair share as soon as they retire. These people still think somehow they're here to stop illegal immigration, to fix it, to stop the... I don't know what to say, Jim.
Yeah, I know. This is the point. You're at a point where it's hard to even have a discussion about this because you can't accept these. You can't have a discussion with someone who thinks it's all right to kidnap the president of another country. I mean, how like start talking about what exactly were the good reasons or bad reasons for doing that? No, this is just wrong. You know what I mean? You can't have a discussion with anybody who thinks, well, let's discuss how many people Israel's actually killed in Gaza versus how many they haven't. And what are you talking about? This is wrong. This is genocide. This is colonialism. If you don't understand that, if you don't understand what ICE is doing in the United States, it's just wrong. You create it's police state action, blatant and not really justified by any immigration policy. It's there to intimidate and to create a police state with literally, they're saying absolute immunity. You want absolute immunity for some masked armed officers running around the country, not identifying themselves, ramming into cars, killing people? What? This is crazy. You never accept that. That's nothing to do with immigration. So let's have a discussion about immigration, but we can't have it until we reset the whole premise, the whole discussion in a way that allows us to have honest discussions about this on principles that are solid, not on fake ginning up of hatred and conflict for no reason whatsoever. And you can't have a discussion about immigration unless you have a discussion about imperialism, because it's the same damn thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, Trump's talking about bombing Mexico. And that's not certainly. We got to understand that there's no way that would cause refugees and immigrants to come to the border.
Sure. Yeah.
You're gonna bomb Mexico. There's gonna be 1 million people at the border.
Yep.
And which leads me to believe, Jim, maybe I'm being a bit of a conspiracy theorist, that's exactly what they want.
Exactly
if we can figure it out, maybe perhaps they can too.
Yeah, that's exactly what they want. They want this conflict and chaos.
Exactly. Where can everybody find you, Jim?
Kavanaugh's Substack on the screen, at Twitter at the polemicist_, and please buy me a coffee. Subscribe to my Substack, free or paid. Everybody gets to read everything, and follow me on Substack on Twitter.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks all my Patreon people and PayPal and buy me a coffee and all of that. If you can afford it, that's great. And of course, I have a P.O. box for all the snail mailers. So if you want to send anything snail mail, whether it's, a card, your manifesto, or a donation, feel free for the snail mailers. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jim. Everybody, share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.